From the beginning of time, mankind has been fascinated with the different kinds of men who walk among us. Some rise as leaders, some follow quietly, some rebel loudly, and some disappear into the shadows only to re-emerge stronger than anyone imagined. Over the years, we've given these men labels: kings, warriors, sages, rebels, wanderers, and now in our modern era, alphas, betas, and the increasingly discussed sigma males. But the sigma male is not just a new term created by internet culture. He represents something far older, something that has existed throughout history and continues to exist today in ways that confuse and fascinate society at the same time. The sigma male is both ancient and modern because his traits are timeless. He embodies the independence of the lone hunter who left the tribe to survive on his own, while also fitting perfectly into our fast-changing, hyper-connected digital world where adaptability and independence have become more valuable than ever. He is the man who refuses to bow to hierarchy, yet somehow still commands respect, the man who lives in silence but whose silence speaks louder than the loudest voices, the man who thrives without recognition but still draws attention wherever he goes. In ancient societies, there were always men who lived on the outskirts of the tribe, men who were neither chiefs nor followers, but who walked their own path, hunting alone, exploring uncharted lands, or becoming mystics and philosophers who sought truth beyond the rules of their people. These men were often feared, respected, or misunderstood, and that is exactly how sigma males are seen today. In a world obsessed with labels, hierarchies, and competition, the sigma male disrupts everything simply by existing, because he proves that you can live powerfully without needing a crown, a following, or external validation. This duality, ancient roots combined with modern relevance, is what makes the sigma male so fascinating, because he carries the wisdom of the past and the adaptability of the future. Unlike alphas who thrive on leading groups, or betas who need to belong to groups, the sigma thrives outside of them, yet he is never truly powerless or invisible. In fact, his power comes from his ability to walk away, to detach, and to define success entirely on his own terms. That is why he feels ancient, like the shamans, monks, and warriors who lived by codes of discipline and self-reliance, but also modern, because in today's chaotic and noisy society, his independence, his adaptability, and his refusal to conform make him more relevant than ever. As we explore this idea of why sigma males are both ancient and modern, we'll see how their traits echo across time and culture, how they embody eternal qualities that every age has needed, and why their presence will always disrupt the balance of society. They are the bridge between tradition and innovation, between the wisdom of yesterday and the demands of today, and in that bridge lies a power that makes them impossible to ignore. 1. The ancient lone wolf archetype. Since the dawn of civilization, every society has been built around groups, tribes, clans, armies, and communities bound together by rules, traditions, and leadership structures. But alongside these groups there has always existed another kind of man, one who refuses to live by the same structures, one who chooses to walk away from the safety of the collective and instead embrace the uncertainty of solitude. And this man is the ancient archetype of the lone wolf, the very predecessor of what we today call the sigma male. In the earliest tribes, survival was everything, and most people depended on one another for food, protection, and survival against predators and rival tribes, yet some men rejected that dependence, whether out of necessity, temperament, or sheer desire for freedom. They became hunters who roamed the wilderness alone, scouts who disappeared for months and returned with knowledge of distant lands, or even spiritual figures who abandoned the village to live in isolation, meditating in caves and mountains, seeking wisdom beyond human politics. These figures were feared because they did not need the group, respected because they thrived without it, and often admired for their courage to survive on their own terms. The sigma male carries this ancient lone wolf spirit into the modern era. Just as those wanderers rejected the authority of chiefs and elders, modern sigmas reject the hierarchy of bosses, institutions, and social validation. They don't crave leadership positions nor do they settle for following someone else's vision. Instead, they create their own path, whether it's in business, lifestyle, or personal philosophy. What made the lone wolf dangerous in ancient times is exactly what makes the sigma dangerous today: unpredictability. A man who is not bound by the rules of the group cannot be controlled by the group. Tribes feared lone wolves because they could become unpredictable rivals, striking when least expected, or they could bring back knowledge and wisdom that undermined the authority of tribal leaders. In the same way, modern sigmas threaten systems of power by refusing to play the game of endless competition, status-seeking, or conformity. They step away from the noise of society, work in silence, and often return with results that shock everyone, whether it's starting a business from nothing, mastering a skill without formal training, or living a life of peace and self-sufficiency while others chase endless external validation. What makes this archetype so timeless is that it transcends culture and geography. The lone warrior in Japan, the desert mystic in the Middle East, the mountain hermit in Europe, the nomadic wanderer in Africa, all of them echo the Sigma spirit of walking away from the collective in search of something higher, something freer. In the modern world, the lone wolf archetype is not about literal survival in the wild but about mental, emotional, and spiritual survival in a society that constantly pressures men to conform, compete, and obey. Just as the ancient lone wolves relied on their own hunting skills, endurance, and wit, modern sigmas rely on their independence, adaptability, and intelligence to navigate life on their own terms. And just as tribes both feared and respected the outsider who lived by his own rules, today's society views the sigma male with the same mix of confusion, respect, and quiet fear, because he proves that a man doesn't need to belong to the hierarchy to thrive, and in fact, sometimes walking away from the group is the very reason he becomes stronger than the group itself. 2. The power of silence across time. Throughout history, silence has always been a language more powerful than words, and nowhere is this truth embodied more clearly than in the Sigma male, who carries silence not as weakness but as a weapon, a shield, and a form of dominance that transcends centuries. In ancient cultures, silence was often associated with wisdom and strength. Warriors who remained quiet before battle inspired more fear than those who boasted loudly. Philosophers who meditated in silence were revered as men of depth, and leaders who spoke rarely but with precision commanded more respect than those who filled every space with noise. The Sigma male inherits this timeless mastery of silence, and in the modern world it is this very quality that makes him so dangerous, so misunderstood, and so magnetic. Silence unsettles people because it denies them the reassurance of predictability. When someone is silent, you cannot read their intentions, and that uncertainty forces others to project their own fears, doubts, and insecurities onto him. The Sigma knows this instinctively, and his refusal to overshare, to seek attention, or to explain himself in every situation creates an aura of mystery that unsettles both allies and rivals. In the workplace, he is the man who listens during meetings while others compete to be heard, and when he finally does speak, his words carry a weight that overshadows the chatter of everyone else. In relationships, his silence draws others in because they sense that he does not need their approval to validate his worth, and that independence becomes magnetic, even intimidating. In history, great figures from samurai who practiced silent discipline to monks who sought enlightenment through meditation used silence as a tool for mastery, and Sigmas today tap into that same energy by withdrawing from the constant noise of social media, gossip, and the endless chatter of conformity. In a society where everyone is desperate to broadcast their every thought, where attention is currency and oversharing is normalized, the Sigma's silence makes him a ghost in the system, someone who cannot be tracked, manipulated, or easily understood. This makes him dangerous not because he is violent but because he is unreadable. Opponents cannot predict his next move, competitors cannot understand his strategy, and those who envy him cannot decode his inner world. Silence is also a form of control, because when others rush to fill the empty space left by his quiet presence, they reveal their own anxieties, their own desperation for validation, and in doing so they give him power without him even lifting a finger. The Sigma does not need to prove himself with constant words. His actions, his choices, and his very refusal to play the social game of endless talking prove more than words ever could. Across time, silence has been feared because it represents restraint, patience, and hidden depth, all qualities that can turn the tide of history when unleashed at the right moment, and the Sigma male embodies that timeless truth, reminding the modern world that sometimes the most dangerous man in the room is not the loudest one but the one who says nothing at all, yet still makes everyone else pay attention. 3. Independence as a double-edged sword. One of the most defining and dangerous qualities of the Sigma male is his absolute independence, a trait that sets him apart from both the alpha who leads and the beta who follows, because while both alpha and beta identities are built within the structure of the hierarchy, the sigma exists outside of it, answering to no one but himself. This independence is a double-edged sword because it gives him unmatched freedom but also burdens him with responsibilities and challenges that most men avoid, and yet it is this very dynamic that makes him both feared and respected across history and into the modern age. From an ancient perspective, independent men were often the explorers, the inventors, and the warriors who left the safety of their tribes to discover new lands, chart dangerous territories, or face enemies alone, without waiting for permission or approval. These men carried civilization forward not because they sought recognition but because they had the inner drive to rely on no one but their own skills, their own instincts, and their own vision. In the modern world, the Sigma continues this tradition of independence by refusing to depend on the approval of society, the validation of peers, or the control of authority figures, choosing instead to carve out his own way of living, earning, and thinking. What makes this independence dangerous is that it cannot be weaponized by those in power. You cannot control a man who does not need your money, your recognition, or your acceptance to validate his existence. When employers realize a Sigma employee cannot be manipulated with empty promotions or false praise, they fear his detachment. When governments recognize that some men refuse to blindly follow trends, propaganda, or social narratives, they quietly acknowledge his threat. Even in personal relationships, the Sigma's independence unsettles others because it means he can walk away at any time without hesitation, without begging for forgiveness, and without fearing loneliness, because solitude is not punishment for him, it is his natural habitat. But this independence is not without its challenges, and that is why it is a double-edged sword. On one side, it grants him the ability to create a life entirely on his own terms, free from the chains that hold most people down. But on the other side, it isolates him, forces him to bear the weight of his decisions alone, and demands that he develop resilience far greater than the average man. The Sigma understands that freedom comes at a cost, and that cost is responsibility, because when you live life outside the herd, there is no safety net, no collective to fall back on if you fail. Yet it is precisely this willingness to accept that cost that makes him so dangerous, because independence turns him into a man who cannot be broken by fear of loss, rejection, or abandonment. Unlike the alpha who needs followers to sustain his dominance, or the beta who needs leaders to give him purpose, the Sigma needs neither, and that makes him unpredictable, uncontrollable, and ultimately free. Across both ancient and modern contexts, independence is what transforms the Sigma from just another man into a figure who inspires respect, envy, and even quiet fear. Because deep down, most people wish they could live as independently as he does but lack the courage to pay the price that true freedom demands. 4. Adaptability through eras. If there is one quality that explains why the Sigma male archetype has survived across centuries, transforming from the lone hunter in the wild to the quiet disruptor in today's digital age, it is adaptability, the ability to bend without breaking, to adjust without losing identity, and to thrive in environments where others crumble under the weight of change. Adaptability is what allowed ancient lone wolves to survive when they left the safety of the tribe. They had to learn new hunting methods when food sources shifted, they had to adapt to weather, landscapes, and predators with no one to protect them, and in doing so, they developed resilience that tribesmen never had to cultivate. That same adaptability carried into different cultural contexts, where outsiders and wanderers often became the ones to introduce new ideas, new tools, and new philosophies, reshaping the very societies that had once cast them out. The Sigma male embodies this same survival instinct in the modern world, though his battleground is not the wilderness but the shifting social, technological, and cultural landscapes of today. In a society where trends change overnight, where careers can vanish due to automation, and where social approval is fragile and fleeting, the Sigma thrives precisely because he is not tied to one rigid identity. While others anchor their self-worth to a job title, a social circle, or a political ideology, the Sigma is fluid. If his career collapses, he reinvents himself. If his relationships end, he finds strength in solitude. If society's values shift, he observes, adapts, and decides for himself whether to align or withdraw. This makes him extremely dangerous in the eyes of rigid systems that rely on conformity, because adaptability means they cannot trap him in a single role, a single definition, or a single weakness. In business, this adaptability often manifests as entrepreneurial creativity. While others wait for opportunities to be handed down, the Sigma creates his own path, shifting from one strategy to another until he finds success. In personal growth, it means he continuously learns, upgrades his skills, and sharpens his mind, never allowing himself to stagnate in comfort. And in social settings, adaptability gives him the ability to blend into different circles when he chooses, yet also vanish without regret when he no longer finds value in them. Historical parallels are everywhere: nomadic tribes that survived where empires collapsed, philosophers who thrived under exile, innovators who worked in obscurity only to later redefine entire eras. The Sigma male is a modern continuation of that lineage, reminding us that survival does not belong to the strongest or the most dominant but to the one who can change when the world changes. And while adaptability may sound harmless on the surface, it is dangerous because it makes him unstoppable. When one door closes, he finds another; when one path is blocked, he carves a new one. Systems that depend on control, authority, or predictability cannot defeat a man who can transform himself endlessly while remaining true to his core essence. This paradox, the ability to be fluid while also deeply grounded, is what makes the Sigma male one of the most resilient and threatening figures across both ancient and modern times, because no matter the era, no matter the circumstances, he cannot be caged by conditions that destroy others, and that kind of flexibility is what turns survival into mastery. 5. Rejection of hierarchies. From the earliest human tribes to the sprawling bureaucracies of the modern world, hierarchies have been the organizing principle of society, determining who leads, who follows, and who survives. Yet the Sigma male has always stood apart from this structure, rejecting hierarchies not out of arrogance but out of an intrinsic understanding that true power does not come from climbing ladders or submitting to authority, but from the ability to define one's own path and remain untethered to the expectations of others. In ancient times, hierarchical structures were vital for survival. The chief or elder maintained order, the hunter followed instructions, and the weak relied on the protection of the collective. Yet even in these rigid systems, the lone wolf, the Sigma of his era, found a way to navigate without submission. He hunted alone when necessary, made decisions without counsel, and survived outside the rules that bound everyone else. By stepping outside the hierarchy, he gained freedom and flexibility that others could never attain, and in doing so, he became unpredictable, invaluable, and, at times, feared by the tribe itself, because a man who does not compete for rank cannot be controlled or easily threatened. Fast forward to the modern era, and the Sigma male embodies this same principle in corporate offices, social networks, and even political spheres. He is the employee who refuses to be constrained by outdated protocols, the entrepreneur who disregards traditional business models, and the individual who does not chase fame or validation merely to fit in. His rejection of hierarchy allows him to move laterally, create his own opportunities, and operate with a freedom that confounds leaders and frustrates those who seek to control him. While society often rewards conformity and punishes rebellion, the Sigma male thrives precisely because he refuses to obey these rules, instead forging his own system of values and success metrics that exist outside the traditional ladder. This rejection is not reckless, it is deliberate and strategic. By removing himself from the competitive scramble for position, the Sigma gains a perspective unavailable to those trapped within the structure, allowing him to observe, understand, and act with foresight. Historical examples abound: nomadic tribes that resisted kings, philosophers who lived outside political courts, and explorers who ignored social expectation all achieved remarkable influence precisely because they rejected hierarchies and operated on their own terms. In the modern context, this makes the Sigma male a disruptive force. He cannot be manipulated through status, bribed through recognition, or coerced through societal pressure, because his allegiance is first and foremost to himself. And yet, this rejection of hierarchy does not make him powerless, it makes him powerful in a way that few understand, because he is free to move, adapt, and seize opportunities that those bound by rules never see. By refusing to be a cog in the machine, he becomes both the observer and the disruptor, the man who can navigate any system while remaining fundamentally outside of it, and this duality, inside enough to understand, outside enough to be untouchable, is what has made the Sigma archetype both timeless and dangerous. In every era, from tribal societies to modern corporations, the man who rejects hierarchy challenges the status quo simply by existing, and this quiet rebellion, rooted in self-reliance and independence, is the very reason the Sigma male continues to be one of the most enigmatic, influential, and feared types of men across history and today. 6. Mastery of mystery. One of the defining traits of the Sigma male, both in ancient times and in the modern era, is his mastery of mystery, a quality that makes him simultaneously magnetic and intimidating, respected and feared, understood by few but sensed by all, because human beings have always been drawn to, and unsettled by, what they cannot fully comprehend. In the earliest societies, mystery was a form of power. Shamans who spoke in riddles, warriors who appeared without warning, and wanderers whose knowledge of distant lands was unmatched commanded attention precisely because people could not predict their actions, read their thoughts, or challenge their authority. Mystery allowed these men to operate above ordinary social constraints and become figures whose influence extended beyond their immediate surroundings. The Sigma male today continues this ancient tradition by cultivating an aura of unpredictability and depth, rarely revealing his full intentions, emotions, or plans, and in doing so, he maintains a psychological edge over those around him. In social and professional situations, this can manifest as a calm, unreadable presence that forces others to wonder what he is thinking, what he knows, and what he might do next, creating an invisible form of influence that does not rely on authority or hierarchy. This ability to remain enigmatic gives the Sigma male freedom to act without interference, because people tend to overcompensate when confronted with someone whose mind and motives are hidden, often revealing their own weaknesses or inadvertently opening opportunities for the Sigma to capitalize on. Across history, mystery has been a tool of survival and influence. Ancient generals used deception and unpredictability to outmaneuver enemies. Nomads who traveled alone remained largely untouchable because their patterns were unknown. Sages and philosophers cloaked their teachings in symbolism to ensure that only those ready for the knowledge could grasp it fully. In the modern era, the Sigma male channels this same mastery by avoiding overexposure on social media, selectively sharing information, and cultivating a life that is difficult for others to categorize. People are naturally drawn to him not because he seeks attention, but because his presence provokes curiosity and intrigue. This enigmatic quality also grants him protection. In situations of conflict, negotiation, or competition, his unpredictability becomes a strategic advantage because opponents cannot anticipate his next move, cannot rely on conventional tactics to manipulate him, and are often disarmed by his calm, deliberate, and seemingly effortless control. Mystery, then, is not just a personality trait, it is a deliberate strategy rooted in ancient human behavior that continues to serve the Sigma male in the modern world, allowing him to navigate social, professional, and personal arenas with influence that is subtle yet undeniable. By mastering mystery, the Sigma maintains autonomy, fosters respect, and ensures that his power cannot be easily challenged, making him an enduring and dangerous archetype across all ages.